22nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Center Region Council of Governments General Forum. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, staff will take a roll call of all members to make sure everyone can hear and be heard.
Mr. Balachandran.
Here.
Mr. Barlow.
Here.
Ms. Baring. Ms. Engman. Ms. Krishnakudi.
Here.
Mr. Lipscomb.
Here.
Mr. Marshall. Mr. Bernier.
Here.
Mr. Best.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Ms. Stilson. Mr. Takak.
Here.
Ms. Danini.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. Ms. Williams. Mr. Beck. Ms. Hartle. Ms. Hoover.
I was born in that, so it was a week ago.
Well, yeah, as a student, because there's, yeah.
Mr. Piper.
Do I play football or do I go about something?
Well, I used to go to Sarah Tech.
That's something I never did, but I know something.
Mr. Cervello. Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Hammeister.
Yes.
Mr. Harden.
Here.
Mr. Lord.
Or he works for her.
Mr. Wilson.
She enjoyed it just because
Mr. Wilson.
Hi, Nigel.
Mr. Abrams.
Here.
Mr. Magruder.
Here.
Ms. Robb. Mr. Trevino.
That's what it is.
And Ms. Whitman.
Here.
Hello, this is Nigel Wilson. I didn't hear my name, but I'm on my.
Nigel, can you hear us?
No. Nigel, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can now, yes, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, let's be sure, especially our online folks, to mute if you're not been recognized to speak. For those in the room, please take a breath before someone has finished speaking. Take a breath. I always use I think of the London Underground, mind the gap. So there is a gap between us in the room and those folks remote, and if we can just take that breath before we start talking, it helps a lot in the management of the meeting. Obviously, for sure, please allow me to recognize you so that we have an orderly progression between comments. With that, we will start with public comments. Does anyone from the public have anything to discuss with the general forum that is not on this evening's agenda? Sir.
I received a public comment this evening from Cindy Hahn, CNET Executive Director, who is pleased to announce that Abigail Wilson, who has been a CNET producer for the past 7 years, has recently been promoted to production manager. Abby is producing the COG General Forum meeting tonight, along with several of our new fall semester interns. Please join me in congratulating Abby on her new position with CNET.
Excellent, thank you. Additional introductions. Ms. Denise.
Thank you very much. Yes, welcome Jeremy Thompson to the COG General Forum. Jeremy is the new Ward 2 Supervisor appointee, and we are absolutely delighted to have him aboard. He comes to us through the Planning Commission, where he was chair for multiple years, and like I said, we're just really happy to have him. Jeremy, if you want to say a few words.
Just thank you. It's nice being here. Great opportunity. Look forward to many more.
Excellent. Welcome. And we have one staff introduction. A lot of us have already met, but let's capture everyone.
Great. For those of you who have not met her, with us tonight is Kathy Bisco. She is our new Facilities Project Manager. Kathy's there. She is a Patton Township resident, so she also is a Penn State grad with a degree in architectural engineering and community and economic development. She's worked as a program director where she organized and led a team of local organizations, property owners, business owners, and municipal officials to raise funds, plan, design, contract, and schedule and manage a large-scale infrastructure improvement. She also has experience in project planning, building code compliance, environmental compliance, and project cost analysis. So we're glad to have Kathy on the team. This is her second week on the job.
Next item we had was recognitions. Unfortunately, the person we were going to recognize is not able to join us this evening, so we're going to defer that to next month. At this point, does any member of the General Forum have a potential new agenda item for this evening's agenda? Hearing nor seeing none, we're going to move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda for this evening consists of the minutes from our July 25th, 2022 meeting. Consists of a Center Region Building and Housing Board of Appeals appointment. And those are the only two items for this evening. Any further discussion on those items? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the general forum, approves consent agenda 1 and 2 listed on August 22nd, 2022 general forum consent agenda, and a special thanks to Douglas Workman for your service.
Excellent. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Take your pick, Scott. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Next item, resolution 2022-4, a resolution of commendation and appreciation for Trish Meek for 27.5 years of service to the Center Region COG. Mr. May.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim May. I'm the Director of the Center Regional Planning Agency. Thank you for letting me take a few minutes tonight to celebrate more than 27 years that Trish Meek served Center Region COG, Center County, and the residents. Over the years, Trish has made a difference in our community and is universally admired and respected for her work at COG. So I just want to tell you about a few things that she's done, many of which are enumerated in your resolution and the agenda. Some of you know that Trish loves to garden. Past summer, she came into the office with what I'd like to call the mother of all tomatoes. And to say that Trish was ecstatic would be an understatement. The tomato was transported lovingly from Pittsburgh, cradled in a cardboard box in the back of her car, and before the door closed behind her on the second floor, she was saying in her outdoor voice, "Look at my tomato, isn't this great? I grew this all by myself, it's perfect, let me tell you." And it was. And it was almost too good to eat. The lesson of the tomato there is that to get good results, gardeners have to start by building good soil, building the roots of the plants and work up. It's a huge amount of work that's necessary to prepare the soil to support good vegetables and all the good blooms that you bring into the office for the staff. That means rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty. And if you ever worked with Trish, you know that was the same ethic that she brought to work here. To work on the programs and projects that she did. So you had no trouble getting your hands dirty and working for the best results that you could for the COG. There are a lot of things that you don't have control over, but if you prepare, build a good foundation for growth, the odds are they will be successful. Some of the things that Trish was successful at here was to see the joy on the faces of some of the kids that she helped through the Strider Bike program that she worked with Beth Lee from Parks and Rec on, development of a bike path system that provides safe transportation for adults, school children and others that want to enjoy biking but don't necessarily have the confidence or skills to ride on the street. Successfully going from a bronze level bicycle-friendly community to a silver level community, planning longer range with the municipalities in Center County for safer pedestrian and bicycle access throughout the community, helping organize, prepare, and establish a media presence for bicycling in the region, and actively participating in all kinds of bicycle events. And finally, developing an inclusive approach to bicycling and building partnerships with bicycling groups in the region to help expand opportunities for everyone in the community. Like building the soil in the garden to get good results, Trish helped build a robust pedestrian and bicycle network by building relationships with municipal staff, governing bodies, appointed officials, and others in the community long before you were able to see the results. And that's the part of her work that I think is underappreciated, because you don't get to see that on a daily basis. She had a real commitment to her work, and we really miss Trish. But I want to thank her for rolling up her sleeves and making our bicycle and pedestrian system such a success today. It's difficult to lose a friendly and talented individual like Trish, but it's also hard to be upset when you know that the work that she put in helped her advance to the next level in her career and put her in a position where she can help other communities statewide. Trish could not be here this evening, so she sent a message that I'd like to read to you right now. Trish said, "Please express my appreciation and thanks to the General Forum for providing me the opportunity to work on such important projects during my tenure at CRPA. The support and leadership of the elected officials over the past 27.5 years are what allowed me to work on projects that made a difference in people's lives and do the work that I love. I look forward to working with COG in my new role on regional and statewide initiatives. I cannot wait for the Center Region to achieve gold bicycle friendly status. I know it will happen. So thank you for letting me take the time to tell you about Trish. And that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Included in our packet was a resolution identifying Trish and recognizing her outstanding service to the Center Region Council of Governments. If someone was comfortable, we could accept a motion to approve said resolution.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there? We have a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you, Trish. Lisa,
He's unavoidably detained, and so if we could skip to the next item, that would be great,
we
please.
can. So the next item is review.
Chair, I need to call for a moment of recess to concur with you.
Okay. Sure. Timeout on field.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Chair.
Time is in again on the field.
Recording in progress.
There was a question on procedure. Recording secretary, Ferguson's recording secretary, should they be needed, is not currently on the call, but the chair, any member can be designated as a recording secretary. So, review CRPR mobile concession vehicle business plan and discuss potential budget amendment. Okay, let's see, how did we get here? So as part of the 2022 budget deliberations last year, the Parks Agency placed a item in the budget with regard to a potential mobile concession vehicle. The Finance Committee pushed back on that and said we really need a business plan, before we would even think about looking at that. Said business plan was brought forward at our July meeting, Finance's July meeting, as a draft. Comments were received, came back at our August 18th meeting, and as indicated in the agenda, a motion of 3-2 to recommend an action was pushed forward to the executive committee. One other item that procedurally occurred The Center Region Parks and Rec Authority looked at the plan from an operational standpoint and also endorsed the plan. So the method of the madness this evening is we want everybody to hear the same presentation and get the same information, hear the various questions, comments, and everything, so we're all on the same sheet. Potentially, we may have a motion and a second for a vote. Potentially. It's not a given. We'll see where the presentation and questions take us. And as a governing body, of course, we're allowed to do that. So with that said, I'll turn it over to our fine parks folks.
Good evening. For many of you who haven't officially met me, my name is Christy Owens. I'm the Recreation Services Manager. I'll try to speak loud. I do have a soft voice. So if you can't hear me, just, wave your hand. Again, like I said, I'm the Rec Services Manager. I'm filling in for Pam Salakanga, so I'll be giving this presentation on her behalf. With me, I have Todd Roth, our Aquatic Supervisor, and Jeff Hall, our Sports Supervisor, to also address any specific questions that you might have. So we started this process back in 2021 during our budget discussions, and mobile concessions became a topic of conversation. We have a very successful concession operations right now at Oakville Regional Park, as many of you know. If you visited there, you've tasted the foods that are out there. We're looking to do the same concept, just in a mobile version. So we're really not looking to compete in the food industry, I think, per se, with local businesses, as much as just trying to provide that service to our patrons that we feel that they need. We modeled this plan after the Oakville Concessions operations, and if you'll look on page 4, you'll see some of the charts that we've provided that includes the net revenue that we've received both from the Oakville Concessions and both of our pools. It's pretty impressive if you think about the small limited menu that we provide at the pools. I mean, we're giving away, novelty items, ice cream sandwiches and waters and such. But yet we're turning a nice net revenue for that facility. So taking this into a mobile perspective, I think makes a lot of sense for what we're trying to provide to the patrons. So those net revenues, as you can see, as far as third-party revenue goes, those third-party contracts have kind of been on the decline since 2013. A lot of mobile food truck businesses out there are struggling, I think, to commit to a schedule that we need them to commit to. So having our own mobile concession unit does provide us a little bit more of that flexibility with the schedule and the menu items and being able to kind of modify what we're going to give to everyone. So there is a need for service, and that's really the reason why we're here. We feel there's a need for food services. Once you skip on to page 7, you'll see a little bit more of the actual net revenue that we've received up at the top there. For the pool, page 6, you can see the revenue from Oakville Concessions. And then we also included the survey that was put out in January. We surveyed all of our pool patrons. We actually put it out to the public and received a little over 500 responses from the public. We thought that was pretty good. And if you look at each of the tables that were provided, you can see that a majority of our respondents were really interested in mobile concessions. About 77% actually said that they would partake in concessions if they were available. I mean, you could probably ask yourself tonight, if you would have come to this meeting, if there was pizza provided, would you have purchased the pizza that was here? Maybe it might have been a perk. So it's kind of the same concept with mobile concession unit. Unless you're not into pizza, maybe you like salads, I don't know. But anyways, if you skip on to page 12, you'll see a little bit about our regional facilities. One of the questions that came up in the finance meeting was, what are the future plans for brick and mortar concession facilities? So we've provided all of those details here, starting on page 12. You've got, 4,000 square feet for Hess, roughly, and that's for a 2-story facility. That includes concessions. You've got 433 square feet at Welch Pool, which is currently being utilized for storage. And as Todd could even elaborate, I'm sure the storage needs at the pools, you know, he's kind of bursting at the seams with what he needs, and it's needed for some of the equipment that he has for programming and for general operations. So to modify that area that was designated for concessions would take a little bit of extra work and a bigger investment. There's also plans of Whitehall Regional Park for about 780 square feet of concessions. I believe that includes some storage. There's no official design documents for these brick and mortar buildings, but just wanted to bring your attention to it and make you aware that there are plans for brick and mortar concessions in our park facilities. So if we move into page 14 and then to page 17, you'll see some of the options that we provided. We looked at 4 different types of trucks, ranging from a truck that's much older, around $50,000, up to a brand new truck, which is about $132,000. That includes the wrapping, that includes the hardware costs for starting up. It gives you a really good snapshot of what we were looking at. And again, these are just cost estimates that we included in this proposal. And of course, we would need to go through the bidding process, potentially look at co-stars to see if there were other cheaper options for purchasing a truck. But we kind of honed in on option B and option D to look at them a little bit more closely. Option B is a truck that's already outfitted. I believe it's an old ambulance truck. It's already an outfitted vehicle that's got the equipment that we would need, but it also has, I think it was 183,000 miles on it. And it's an older vehicle, it's a 2000 versus a brand new truck, option B. And then we did break down, I don't mean to jump around here, but we did break it down into what the hours of operation would actually look like for the mobile concession. We based a lot of this on the feedback that we got through the surveys. So Todd and Jeff and Pam sat down and really came up with a good solid schedule. Obviously, this is something that would be fluid and be able to kind of move around depending on the needs and the interests of the community and available staffing as well. And we looked at about 120 operational days for the concession, and that gave us a projection of what we thought our revenue was going to be. On to page 22 through 24 is really where the financial end of everything lies. So once you look at the breakdown of staffing, breakdown of costs for startup versus just in general overall what this would look like, you'll see the net profit up on page 23 ranging from $31,000 to $32,000. That's after all of the startup costs are covered. Staffing and wages, just a point clarification on this, does not include Jeff's salary. His cost was looked at as more of an indirect cost because he's already out at our facilities, already at our call, working and handling a lot of the sports aspects. So his salary is not factored in, but all of the other direct costs are factored into these charts here as a projection. And then Joe helped us out through finance to kind of determine what the payback period was, which would range, if we looked at those 2 vehicles, would range between 2 to 4 years in a payback. So you buy completely new, you've got a payback of 4 years that you're looking at. And then the depreciation values were also included for each of those vehicles there, just to give you kind of a general overview of that. But in general, I think our overall intention is that the cost center for this would really come out of the C20 450 account. And then in the future, we have a staffing plan that we've put together. It's a 5-year staffing plan. That also includes a concession manager at a full-time rate. Again, that's a proposed 5-year plan. Within this plan, it's a part-time position currently. So if that were to convert to a full-time, that would need to move over into, I believe, the C2454 account. It would be in a separate cost center. One comment had come up at the last meeting about hybrid options and things like that. Of course, we've factored that into our fleet just in general. And there's a lot of work that still needs to occur on the back end to kind of figure out where charging stations, things like that would even be a possibility. But maybe that's something to consider in the future. But that's, I believe it covered pretty much everything. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to, answer them.
Okay. Questions for staff? Mr. Amos?
Could you give us some background on the discussions you had with the current food truck industry and how that shifted into we possibly purchasing our own? I mean, what kind of back and forth took place between how many trucks we have in the area now and why it got to this point?
I'll let Todd and Jeff come up and speak to that in just a second, but I think in general, with the decline we've seen, we've reached out to a lot of food trucks to attend our special events and things like that, and it's just harder for them to commit to a schedule. So we've seen quite a bit of a decline in availability, which makes it hard for us to provide food services at some of our facilities. As far as direct communication, I don't know if Todd or Jeff, you want to speak to that?
So I can give you an example. Sorry. I can just give everybody an example. At Hessfield, we had food trucks at Hessfield for a few seasons, I think, maybe 2012 through 2015. And they didn't perform and they couldn't commit to every weekend that we would be there. And when they were there, they weren't there the hours. They'd show up sometimes at 9 or 10 a.m. and we'd already be playing games, and then they'd pack up and leave at 3 o'clock and we still had on games. So it really wasn't, they said it wasn't worth their while. It certainly didn't benefit the teams that came in to Hessfield.
I'll just add to that. The service we'd like to provide at the pools is 7 days a week. And most food vendors do not want to commit to 7 days a week, 6 or 7 hours a day. Most of them have said they prefer to do special events here and there, but for a lot of them, it's a side gig for them. They don't want to be a full-time concession service, which is what we want to provide to our customers.
Answer your question.
Well, keep the discussion going.
Okay.
You haven't explained to me yet, so keep going.
Follow up for that.
Okay. So are you passing the floor?
Pardon?
You're passing the floor for more discussion.
Right.
Very good. Yes.
But to follow up to that particular item, I think that in this discussion, I've noticed one thing that's happened is we kind of went from talking about a food truck service, which typically doesn't provide the items you find on page 9. Oh, you're not sharing screen anymore. If you could share screen to page 9, the intention of what we're selling is concessions, even though it would be housed in a truck theoretically. So when you're talking about having those concessions for 7 days, that's not a typical food truck operation. So if they were talking to food trucks, they were probably talking to the wrong trucks. They would want to be talking to concession trucks. But if they're talking about concessions, I'm not sure why we would want concessions in a truck when our long-term plan was to do concessions on site. So it's sort of like, let's make sure that we're now talking about concessions, because the products, I'm sorry, maybe it's scroll this direction. There it is. So that's concessions right there, really, a concession truck, right? So, and then just a question to follow up. In here it says that it would be at one pool on Saturdays and another pool on Sundays, but then what you just said was you want to offer it 7 days a week at the pool. And I think that's a really important point that we should talk about a little bit, is that I think what we really do want is those very simple items being offered at all of our regional facilities, maybe not Millbrook, but maybe just granola there, but I think that we have that plan in place, And we even have some space at least one of the pools to implement that very simple menu. So that's a concession menu that we typically find at a recreation facility, not a food truck menu.
So this truck is a fill in the gap till we get to the hard brick mortar kind of building?
We'll let staff answer that.
I mean, I think essentially right now, that is the plan, is that this would serve the need that we have right now, which is to provide the food service with the intention that we have these long-range plans for master planning at Hess, for master planning at Welch. Park Forest doesn't currently have any plans for concessions. Whitehall does have a plan for concessions, so I think the intent is that we would eventually want to invest in those brick and mortar. If I can speak on behalf of the department, I really think that's the ultimate goal, and this is kind of that interim pass-through to provide that service, and also gives us more flexibility to kind of go from one facility to the next where maybe we can't provide that. And to your point too, Laura, I mean, I agree, the food service is not gonna necessarily be provided 7 days a week at one facility. It would be a fluctuation between both facilities, but the mobile unit would be housed at Park Forest Pool. That would kind of be its home base. That's where it would stay and be stored. Our staff would report there to pick it up. It would fluctuate between both of the pools. And again, anyone that builds a schedule knows that that's subject to change based on need, based on, you know, all sorts of factors that we just don't know until we get started.
We're going to go to Ms. Krishnakudi first, and then we'll come to Ms. Stevens.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I was going back to that question of the food trucks and availability. Being new, I might have missed this, but was there ever a request for proposals from food trucks in our area? And if so, who responded? And yeah, I was just trying to understand any barriers to participation.
So we did do that for Hess Field a few times, and we got very few response. Actually, 1 year we got no responses. 1 year, actually 2 years, we had certain food trucks that came to Hess Field and just didn't perform like we needed them to. So it has gone out before.
So I have follow-up. Was that in recent years, or when was the request for proposals?
I can't give you, this is an educated guess. I think the last time we did it was 2019.
I'm sorry, 2000?
2019.
19.
Pre-COVID.
Okay. So, and the reason I'm asking this is I know that many, cities around the country do this, that they issue this request for proposals, and that's how they get food trucks to come. And I just wondered, whether, the scene in State College has changed and what the interest would be now. And I also am wondering, when you do ask them to participate, if we could look at the economics around it for them, because the margins in the food industry is, is very small. So I'm just wondering if it's worth our while as COG, before we get into this kind of mobile concessions, to kind of look at that a little bit more.
Great. Ms. Stevens, then we're going to go to Mr. Balacondran, and then we're going to go Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I had a hard time at different points focusing in on some things, but I was really especially interested in some of the comments that were listed as a response to your survey. I didn't get the overall impression that it was a need, more a want. And so I always struggle with needs and wants. And I actually have a lot of history in concessions. I used to do it for Bethesda Chevy Chase Athletic Boosters, and I used to do it for Bethesda Soccer Club. So I also understand that it is a very difficult business. Food truck industry has a 60% failure rate, so 60% of them that start end up failing. And I worried like about the pizza, for instance. Is it going to be just more in warming ovens? So are you going to buy it from Domino's or somebody else and then just keep it in warming ovens? Or will you be actually making pizzas?
I think the logistics of the menu items hasn't quite been refined just yet as far as what we're selling. I mean, we have a menu that's proposed on here. We have equipment that we know we need. Todd might be able to speak a little bit more. I don't know if he's had discussions with Pam about the exact equipment that's going in the truck.
Yes, that's the thing, it's gonna depend on what equipment's in the truck. The capacity of the truck to prepare food or keep food warm is what's gonna dictate a lot of what we're able to provide.
Okay, and so then that gets back to the other things that I was reading in here about the storage wouldn't actually be at Park Forest Pool. It would either be at Welch Pool or Oak Hall. So then getting it to there, suddenly there's a disconnect. And then there was something about purchasing a freezer for Park Forest that I didn't understand. I also had concerns about the driving of this. I know when my daughter was going through EMS training, she had to have special training to drive an ambulance. So if it's be it a new one or the ambulance frame model, I was a little concerned about that. I also know that a lot of people still wanted to be able to bring their own food to the pool. And while maybe they were excited about the thought that I don't know, are they gonna be allowed to bring their food? And then the variety of gluten-free, dairy-free, those options become a real thing. I also worry about, particularly at the pools, the timing and the ability to serve people this menu of sandwiches and pizza, because I know that the kids are gonna be all coming at one time when it's Adult Swim. And you're gonna have this rush to the food truck. And some people will just say, oh, it's not worth it because the line's too long, because I want to get right back in the pool. That sort of thing worries me. I didn't write down all my concerns, but I guess I just have a whole lot of concerns.
I got it. Please, that echoes around and the folks remote really have a hard time.
If I can speak to that. I think I understand where your concerns are coming from, if I can just hopefully clear up some of that. Anyone is still going to be allowed to purchase food outside of the pool and bring that in, so we're not excluding people from doing that. So they can call and order food if they'd like. We're not going to prevent people from doing that. As far as training goes, there would be some training involved for our staff. We did look at a trailer hitch option, and we felt that with the staff that we have, that would be a little bit more tricky because the training involved with hitching and unhitching could be a bit detrimental for some of these younger staff. So there would definitely have to be some sort of training in order to drive the truck. Right now, if we model right on the go, it's the same situation. We have summer camp staff who currently are driving that truck. Some feel more comfortable than others, and that's just kind of the way that works. I'm trying to think what others can do that you would ask, but.
Follow up on that comparison. The Rect on the Go investment, I think, was about $30,000. We're talking about a very sophisticated $135,000 to $150,000 vehicle. It's not the same as driving an old box truck that's gotten a wrap. I think that's even high on the investment. So I just want us to be careful about that in terms of training, in terms of that comparison.
Okay, please, before you interject like that, I think the point was with regard to driving a vehicle, I understand the dollar investment is different between, but the safety of our staff, safety of our citizens, I think was the main point that you were making, the comparison of. Ms. Stevens, anything else?
I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Go Paul, please, and then Ms. Williams.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I just had some clarifying questions, a couple of them. Number one, maybe I misheard this during the question session, but this is gonna be actually food that is going to be sold on these trucks, right? It's not gonna be like duplicative of the concessions that are already being sold at Hulchin Park Forest.
Correct, this will be food that's sold.
Okay. Number two, I'm wondering, in terms of the actual way, so it's like COG would purchase this truck, whatever kind of truck it is, and the food that would be available for patrons would be based on what kind of a truck it is, and then I guess it's contracted out to a particular food service provider that would then come in and then operate the truck and then sell it at those times. Would it be like a rotating set of food vendors? Would it just be one food vendor? Are any of those details things that have been worked out, I guess?
Sure, I think what we're really proposing here is the operation of a concessions mobile truck. Not necessarily bringing in third parties to work out of that truck, at least that's not part of this proposal. And we modeled like I said, all of this after the Oakville Concession. So we're looking at providing the basic food needs that we're providing at Oakville right now, utilizing very similar equipment so that the purchasing of the food and the recycling of all of the storage and everything is very similar from that facility to this facility. We're really not trying to get into a robust operation of food prep for the people that are going to be working in the concession. I mean, we're talking hot dog, burgers, simple things that aren't going to take a lot of extra work and a lot of sophisticated equipment that you typically would see in a food truck industry type business.
So just to clarify, it's actually something that's in-house then, basically. The food truck would be completely in-house. I don't know, being a patron of Welch and Park Forest pools, I think having food there sounds like a great idea.
Very good, thank you, sir. Ms. Williams?
Yeah, thank you so much. Some of my questions might sound repetitive, but I'm just going to be very specific when I ask. And it kind of goes to Supervisor Krishna Cuddy. She asked about when you're talking to other food trucks. And I'm wondering, have we considered, because you made a point that a lot of people don't want to stay there all day long. They just don't want to commit to that. Have you guys considered different businesses, either using the truck on certain days, like a rotation, or people who have their own food trucks rotating on certain days? Maybe they come every Monday or first and second Monday, that type of thing. Have you guys considered that? That's my first question. Secondly, I guess the activity on the pool with the pools was not going to be the same Monday through Sunday. So you want to get 7 days a week. Will it really be costing more for the truck to be there on certain days versus the weekends where it might be more popular? In the winter seasons I guess I don't know. I guess I'm kind of confused a little bit about the about how cost efficient this really is. And then you made a comment about just selling simple food and it won't be that hard. But if these people aren't trained, you can still get a third-degree burn in the food truck, right? So I guess I'm wondering, like, are we just rewarming? Somebody made that comment. Are we just rewarming, or are these people actually going to cook, and are they going to know what to do? What's going to happen if there's an accident, a grease fire, those type of things that can happen, if you're not really, if you never worked in that kind of closed space. And the equipment, I guess it seems kind of backwards to say, I don't really know what we're going to be selling until I see what kind of equipment is in the truck. So I guess I'm kind of confused on that part. And I guess wouldn't that go with the cost of the food truck, or what type of equipment?
Right.
So that's it, sorry.
So we proposed 4 different options of food trucks with different things. Some of them come completely outfitted. So we would have to really refine that menu to figure out whether or not we would need pool items or not. Again, we have to go through the bidding process, which could completely change which truck we have. So what's in the pool now may not even be part of that pool of options for the truck. So buying completely new gives us a little bit more flexibility of what we want, and gives us the flexibility to refine the menu, figure out exactly what sort of warmers we need, what equipment's going to be used for the facility. And to answer your question about,
Hours.
Yeah, so, first, just responding about other food trucks. So as recently as last year, we asked trucks to come 1 day a week, and we could not get consistency for a single day per week, let alone 7 days a week for service. In terms of the popularity, that's a really good point, and we have found at the pools, the popularity, yes, day-to-day things change, we have different programs going on, things like that, but the popularity is really based on the weather. And so we actually bring more staff in for pool operations on hotter, busier days. We would expect the same thing to happen with the food truck. If it's a cold, rainy day, maybe the food truck doesn't operate as long that day. Whereas on a hot, busy day, expect to be there most of the day. So it's more weather related than it is actual programmatic or day-to-day operation stuff. And then for staff training, yes, absolutely. I mean, staff, we train all of our other staff already. You know, our lifeguards have a very robust 35-hour training course that they go through before they can even work. And we would propose something very similar for our food truck employees to go through training. I know Jeff has his Serve Safe certification. We have similar things that we would have all these people. And there would be an older supervisor on the truck too. So this wouldn't just be like 50-year-old kids. We would have a supervisor, and that's it as part of the proposal, is to have a supervisor on the truck at all times.
Last thing, there at Welsh Pool, there's an ice cream truck. So I guess I'm wondering, will that still be there? Will you all be selling dessert? Does that cancel? Like, how does that work? Will you guys be selling desserts at other places? I really don't know about the other pools. I don't go to one. But
so right now we sell ice cream and soda at our front desk area.
Yeah.
Because the truck wouldn't be at the pool all the time, you know, it'd go one day to be at Welsh, one day to be at Park Forest. We can still sell ice cream and soda at the pools, especially because the truck's not going to be there every single day. So I think we can continue that operation.
Thank you.
And I'll just throw from the finance discussion, we weren't looking for all or nothing. So hopefully they could, with their success, they could show you want to be at the pools, you know, some of these other food trucks and stuff, and they would supplement. There was actually discussions that if successful, you need more than one. But you got to prove one.
Did you say no? You guys weren't considering letting third parties, like if a restaurant wanted to use your truck on the week, you said no to that, or did you guys not talk about that?
I think we'd have to investigate the liability of that before we did that. I mean, we'll consider and look into anything, but that can't say something.
Mr. Abrams and then Ms. Stevens again. I'm sorry. We'll go over Mr. Abrams, Mr. Harden, Ms. Stevens.
You're on mute.
Thanks for calling on me. I'm really impressed at the degree of knowledge and experience that the forum has in this area. Heaven forbid if we should have to try to figure out how to pass a multi-million-dollar budget. But in any case, I think that this thing would be a good idea. Doesn't look like it costs that much, and it harkens back to a time when about 60 years ago, when I was in my mid-teens, when there were food trucks at the playgrounds, and people went up and got ice cream cones and things and hot dogs, and they were very popular. I think that it'll be popular here, and I trust the management of the pool and others to do the right thing with this. Obviously, there are regulations we have to have and training, but I think all that's being considered. So I think we should go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harden, then Ms. Stevens, then Mr. Bernier.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I have to go back many, many years, even back to his teens. I didn't think back that far. But as a person who used to play in tournaments, umpire tournaments, run concessions in tournaments, and did it many, many weekends in the summer after summer after summer. When you run a tournament, you make your money on the concession stand, and you make a lot of it. And the reason you do is softball. I don't know the pools well enough, but I can tell you the softball teams, and I know at S Field, whenever you're in a tournament, especially you get in a loser's bracket, you're playing a game every hour or two. So you don't have time to go run to McDonald's or somewhere to get pizza. And if you have a concession stand that's selling barbecue, hot dogs, and hamburgers and chips and stuff like that, and lots of drinks, you'll sell out. We used to sell out by the middle of Sunday. We had to go run and get more stuff. So I have no problem with the economics of the truck. I think the truck, it's got a captive audience, and I think from an economic standpoint, I think it's a no-brainer. The point that we all have to consider is, do we want to outlay this kind of money? This kind of money to start out. Other than that, I have no problem with this truck.
All right, sir. Ms. Stevens, Mr. Bernier, and then Mr. Grant.
I agree with you, Frank, having also been involved with many tournaments, et cetera, and things like that. But where we differed was actually that was a fundraising for the teams that were involved. So the soccer club ran the concessions, and they provided the volunteers, or the wrestling team or the basketball team. So it was an individual sport that actually ran the concessions, and then they got the money. So it was more of a service. And that's, I guess, sort of where I'm struggling, is that this is Parks and Rec, and I feel like Parks and Rec is supposed to provide Parks and Rec kind of stuff, not food service. And I think that's my big tripping point. And then I also, speaking to what you were saying about the food truck might not operate if it's raining, is that going to present a hiring challenge if, say, for instance, we have like a week of rain or something, and so then those people on that truck wouldn't be getting paid? That might create a little bit of an issue for somebody, or would you somehow repurpose them somewhere else?
I'll just say I currently don't experience that at the pools. The lifeguards, front desk staff, I mean, they all know if it's a rainy day, some of them may go home. Sometimes they enjoy some time off. It makes them a little hungrier to work when the sun's shining, so.
So if it's like lightning and thunder, then the food truck would just stay there?
Depends on the forecast, you know, and the timing of it. I mean, like today, Park Forest tonight, they heard a little bit of thunder at 6:30, kind of cleared out, we close up for the night. If it happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll stay open, you know, we'll see what happens with the rest of the day. It's really a day-by-day thing, but to answer your question, we have not seen the staffing challenge based on the weather like that.
Jeff, could you speak to Hall on that? I mean, you run into the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with call. If we have a 1 or 2 hour weather delay, we just hang around, wait till we can resume, or we just cancel the tournament. That's not an issue. Unless something with rain, so it wasn't an issue at all. But that's staffing issues that we call.
Mr. Bernier, then Mr. Grant.
I wasn't going to speak as long as we're hearkening back. I have extensive experience as a consumer of Park and Rec concessions for the past 50 years. Going back, they will recall, to the Park Forest pool 50 years ago, spending my paper out and allowance money, all of it actually worth it, at the pool concession, and then 30 years at Hess. So they had a brick and mortar concession, and then the last 10 years of alcohol. So from a consumer standpoint, and much like Frank said, to me, I always consider it a need, not a want. I consider it part of the business of offering the recreational service. You know, in those cases, those are all brick and mortar facilities. I don't know if it has had any brick and mortar, but it was a box. You know, it was on site. So, I mean, so to me, philosophically, I saw it as a consumer as a need, not necessarily a luxury. So in discussing this in College Township, it then comes down to, does it, if we're going to move forward on some option, does it fit the direction that we've adopted to take care of what you have first? In other words, in the priority scheme of investing, you kind of adopted a direction to first take care of what you have. And I think you could make an argument that this is asset maintenance. If you accept the fact that it is part of, concessions is part of what you're offering at the pools and the parks as your mission, I think it's not a stretch to then interpret that this is taking care of what you have. as opposed to going off in a different direction. At least that's been my viewpoint. So then the question becomes, how do you go about doing that? And I think in College Township, our preference is brick and mortar. It seems like we're headed there. We're still committed to that, so we're talking about a stopgap. I know we've had some discussion. I think our second preference would be to contract it out. I think it would be everybody's. But it appears the market forces are working against us there. Maybe, maybe not. If that changes, then I think that would be our preference. But if not, then our preference is based on the fact that we believe this is a need, not a want, and we believe that it does fit in the directive of taking care of what you want. And I think we should consider moving forward then, if market forces will prevent us from contracting, at evaluating and moving forward with one of these purchase options based on my experience, which has been very similar to Frank's on the economic return.
Thank you. Mr. Graham, Mr. Magruder, Ms. Danini.
Well, but we didn't have this much trouble building this building. This much discussion building this building. But first I want to thank the Parks and Rec for looking at recognizing a problem and finding a solution to this. It's a very good, very out-of-the-box solution. I think it's a great idea. We know we have a problem. We know that our residents attend our parks. We deserve to give their amenities to them. We have these parks, they enjoy it. We need to do this. Yes, brick and mortar we prefer, but that's, from what I'm discussing, hearing it's years down the road. We haven't got plans for some of them, and we know that Hessfield, there's nothing there. That is what our goal is. So we don't want to forget. We want that to be our goal, to have permanent concessions all over the place. But the Parks and Rec group, I'm not sure that's probably a very good solution to this. So, I would be the first to be concerned that we are interfering with private industry. That's not what we can do or should do. But I think that the three of us, we've all done our shares in concession stands at Hessfield and every place else. We know there's a demand there. We've all done the same thing over the years, and we know that their money is there. There's no doubt about it. If there is a need for it. So we're not competing against private business, and I like that idea. Food trucks you're right, if they fail, they always have other jobs. I think they've got some of these timelines interfere with other jobs, or if they want to go to specialties where they can be someplace, get a lot of business. So I can understand why food trucks wouldn't be there, or trailers or the trailer food sausage trailer won't be there because he goes to carnivals, he doesn't want to be there. So I understand that. So I think we can understand why they don't want to be there. It's a money producing revenue. Our pools are money producing revenue. This is an opportunity to maybe a little money neutral and maybe to make some money. I know that if we all go buy a hot dog there, it will help everybody. So and we can't wait for stands to build. The money is in the budget. Yeah, I understand. As Joe talked to this, we have money in the budget. So, but there was nothing in here that had a motion. So I'm going to formulate a motion with this. Now, I don't know, that may be a two-step motion. My first part, I would move that to be authorizing the purchase of this food truck as not to exceed, I believe it was 132, and I know that's what we talked to the finance committee, that we would not exceed that money. There's a motion. There is a motion here?
There's a finance committee's recommendation.
Okay, recommendation. Okay.
There is no motion in our.
That's what I was reading.
Because we need to have this discussion.
Do this. Now, I don't know if this also some talk, this requires a budget amendment. Is this all at the same motion, or are these two motions, or how will we handle this?
We would need a motion for a budget amendment to make the purchase this year, and depending on the outcome of the bidding or procurement, there would need to be authorization for the purchase as a secondary piece, because we have not gone through the procurement. There was discussion in the finance committee meeting and other discussion recently about which to get a used vehicle or to get the newer vehicle. The procurement strategies would be different depending on what direction we get from the general forum on procurement of the used vehicle. That would be difficult. We might have to compare apples to oranges, if you will, in terms of what we could get, but that would be a little bit more like the procurement that was authorized last month for the crash attenuator vehicle for the fire company. In the case of a newer vehicle, we may be able to bid and specify exactly what we're looking for, and that would, both purchases would still need the authorization from the general forum. But right now, what is before you would be the authorization to go ahead and a specification on the budget amendment.
So the motion to purchase this, and I believe we should purchase new rather than used. There's a reason we don't buy used snow plows or used fire trucks or used police cars. Their usage is much more life expectancy. So I would move that we purchase a new. Well, this is also the recommendation from the parks. Am I right? I'm right about that. This is what you recommend, that we purchase a new one. Okay. I move that we formulate a motion that we purchase a new truck, up not to exceed, I think it's 132, whatever it is. And I guess in this motion, I'm unclear, but I will say that we use it as a budget amendment to take this out of money that's already in our budget. So I'm not talking to Joe. The money is in the budget right now.
Point
Right?
of order, is this a motion?
Yes. I'm formulating the motion. Yes. Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying about where the money is coming from.
The money
Let's
is,
clear
as Joe
that
explained, the money is in our budget that we can
Then
use
why
it
are we
for.
doing a budget amendment? It's not all there, right? Chair, clarify the motion, please.
Well, the motion is very simple.
If we could let him finish speaking, and then I'll make sure that we're all clear before we move forward.
Just help me out, Rich, on this one.
Okay, so your point for any budget amendment,
Yes.
if you're gonna move money from one place to another, if I'm gonna do this, I'm not gonna do this, so.
It's not.
So the other side of the amendment.
It's amendment, budget amendment.
Which was discussed in the finance, was out of the Parks Capital Equipment Fund balance.
Yes,
Which is
yes.
as shown as the finance committee's recommendation.
And then we purchased.
So is that your
It
motion?
sounds like it is.
Okay, so.
Maybe you want to read that.
I'm going to, I would just point you to the top of page 7.
Okay.
I am going to, there is a motion on the floor. I will be asking for a second. We will not be stopping discussion because we have a motion and a second, if we have a second. Is that clear? At this point, I have Mr. Magruder to speak, Ms. Danini, Nalini will speak again, and then Mr. Takak. That's what I had.
Probably should get a
Mr. Lord,
second.
do you wish to speak as well? We'll add you to the list.
Probably should get a second.
Can I second that motion?
Hold up. We have a motion on the floor. We have a motion on the floor.
Clarify the motion.
I'm trying, if you just let me speak. Very similar to the page at the top of page 7.
Yes.
That a budget amendment not to exceed $132,000 be approved to purchase a mobile concessions vehicle utilizing funds from the Parks Capital Equipment Fund balance. That is the motion on the floor as I understand it. Mr. Graham, do you concur?
I concur.
Does anyone wish to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Again, discussion is not ended. Mr. Magruder, thank you for being patient.
No worries, and I appreciate all the lively discussion too. And I'll jump on the train as well. Maybe as probably one of the youngest people in the room at 33 years old back in my day. But I would actually.
Point of order, I think Ms. Williams is going to give you a fight.
Yeah, but just from a social justice perspective as well, I do philosophically think that food is integral in anything that we do within our government, particularly Parks and Rec. And so I do think that is a need and not a want. And again, I remember growing up not actually having money, only enough money to actually get into the pool. And just knowing, the wear and tear that, swimming and running around at a pool takes, I think it's important that we do have some offerings. And I would imagine, I was in spaces where, it was third-party vendors and just the cost was prohibitive for me, myself and friends. And so I would expect, and this can be clarified, I guess, but our food would likely be at an affordable rate. And I would like to see even further down the road, some type of voucher system or something for individuals who may not be economically, as privileged. And so, yeah, that's just my thought on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it. Ms. Danini.
Thank you so much. I agree. I really appreciate the lively dialogue, and I am happy for it and not at all critical of it, and I'm thankful that we all can be patient and participate. I also agree that there's a need there, but that need is planned to be met. And right now we're talking about a stopgap measure that involves additional staff hires, a lot of training, a capital investment of $150,000, something that's based on, at the floor, point of order, something that's based on something that is not climate friendly, whereas our previous plan to have concessions at each of our locations is climate friendly. If you look at the selection of items that are identified to be served, and you had any experience whatsoever in food service, you would see that the equipment that's required for them is minimal, refrigeration and heating items. Any of our pools or our regional facilities can be outfitted on site for an equivalent investment while we simultaneously take care of the storage issues that we have at both pools. As I reflect on the Ferguson Township's discussion of the CIP, whereupon we found this item in that future plan, we urged that we as a body consider this in terms of all of our other priorities. I think you would find consensus on our board, although I don't know because I haven't proposed it to them yet because the time frame on this is far too short. But I think that my board would probably be supportive of taking that $150,000 and putting it into the Hest Field bathroom concession on site, which we need, which could be, right, easily supplying this meager list of items. Further, I do want to be a voice for the business community because as a member of the Pine Grove Mills Steering Committee, Pine Grove Mills Farmers Market Steering Committee, who work with food trucks, although not concession trucks, I will tell you that the RFP process that we are comparing right now required that they give a 10% profit margin to CRPR. That is not something that a food truck can manage. Additionally, this does not meet the need that was stated to have everyday concession at our pools. Consistent for parents to plan their meager savings to buy some snacks for their kids. Not to have to worry about the food truck if it's going to be there that day. Not to have to worry about getting to the food truck and staffing it only to have rain close it when you could have a concession on site that would be much more resilient to those last minute closures. I believe that Ferguson Township would really be very grateful if this body could give us another month to consider this matter so we can talk about it before we task staff with moving forward with a budget amendment and putting that on their plate when they're already busy. Could we please have more strategic discussions through our CIP and budgeting process to talk about our facilities needs, including storage, food concessions at our regional facilities, meeting our climate goal changes, and our social justice goals. Because having a food truck roving around isn't what's going to do it. Investing in infrastructure that's stable at each location and predictable at each location is what helps parents that are struggling to prepare things because they don't have enough time ahead of time to do so, speaking as one of those parents in my younger years. So what I'm asking is if this body would please consider deferring this amendment to the budget for this year so we can have some policy dialogue amongst our own bodies and each other about some very serious needs that we see coming in fire and parks. And we really want to embark on this. And with all due respect, Mr. Bernier, that is a far stretch to think that this is taking care of what we have. We have master plans that identify on location food concession. Let's find a better bridge than this between now and then. Let's put this money right into Hess that we've been hearing needs for years and years.
Very good. Ms. Krishna Kudi.
Thank you so much. I was part of the finance committee discussion, and one of the things I've realized as I've gone through the material is that I would really like to have some more information on the entire picture, not just of 2023, to see how this operation is going to be sustained. What I mean by that is we saw these tables where there was a profit margin when we had the part-time concessions, person, and then this was going to then roll over to a full-time position in 2024. And so I would really, my question is, can we have access to numbers which show us these projections with the full-time salary and benefits and kind of see some estimates for 2024 and beyond before we decide to get this truck? And I say this because once we get the truck, then it's too late to look at those numbers. So I'd really like to have those numbers, and maybe I should pose this as a question. Do you have those numbers? And if you have it, could you share that with us?
The projections for the full-time, I think you're referring to the full-time concessions manager, is that correct?
Right, that's correct. Where you would then need like this full-time salary and benefits, which I calculate can, if you look at the maximum numbers, which are $47,000 for the salary and approximately $27,000 in benefits, it could be a cost of about $94,000 a year, looking at the maximum number. And so I'm just wondering, could you share some numbers with us for 2024, 2025 and beyond before we make this investment or this budget amendment for this truck?
I believe the payroll addendum for 2022 should reflect those numbers for the full-time position. And the 5-year staffing plan should also have those numbers in there with those cost projections.
I just meant like, what I heard at the meeting was that this money for the full-time position would come from another department, but the only way we could look at how concessions is doing, if all those costs are put in like in the concession cost centers, I was wondering if you could share that with us. What would that look like? Can concessions be self-sustaining?
Christy, could I, so the concessions manager position is being driven by the staffing study,
Correct.
not by this discussion with the concession.
Right, so it is not a definitive, yes, it's going to be a full-time position. It's a proposed conversion of a part-time to a full-time position.
It would have to warrant itself, I guess.
Correct.
So the details on the concession manager stuff were shared with the HR committee, am I correct on that? And that's where those are really driven, separate from this discussion on the concession.
So I don't mean to like restate this point, but I think I was wondering if the COG finance director or somebody has taken a look at these numbers to see whether that. It's my understanding that this part-time position would not become a full-time position if we did not have the mobile truck. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And so I was wondering if we could see those numbers, because I think that's part of our decision making.
Mr. Hart.
I just wanted to answer the discussion on this, that even if, whether we do a truck, or we do brick and mortar, we're still gonna have to hire staff, we're still gonna have to train staff. The only difference is, if we start with the truck and see how successful it's gonna be, then we're making it at least a third less staff we're having to hire right off the get-go. And a less than a third that we have to do, because we've got one truck versus 3 bricks and mortars. So I think the understanding that we need to understand that this is how you get into things like this. And if we start with the truck, okay, and we get those people trained, when bricks and mortar, we're already gonna have somebody trained, and you're not having to train 6, 7, 8, 9 people at the same time. And the other thing to keep in mind is that when you have bricks and mortar, you're putting people there they're gonna be there. So whereas if it's a rainy day, trucks, you're gonna have to pay minimum wage for a certain period of time for those people in there, and they have to clean it. Oh, minimum hours, how's that?
So you're sharing that from your facilities hat.
Yes.
Mr. Takak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I promise to be brief. What I wanted to say was I was quite impressed by this business plan. And I don't agree that this is a stopgap measure. I think it actually provides some flexibility and scalability that we wouldn't otherwise have. Not every event or every facility has brick and mortar. So I'm thinking of things like Millbrook Marsh and those kinds of things. But what really impressed me about this was that this is really a relatively low risk, but pretty high reward proposition. I mean, it seems to me the economics are pretty clear that this would be revenue generating rather quickly, and that this capital expenditure could be paid off in just a few years. And frankly, if it doesn't, we know how well the resale values of capital equipment are, because we're dealing with that right now. So if a couple of years down the line, we decide we don't want to be in this business, I think we would recoup much, if not all, of that initial cost. That being said, if people do have heartburn about a capital expenditure of this size, I did note that there was something in there about lease to own options, or we could perhaps look at financing this, or look at it in a slightly different way than taking off the whole bite at once. That should have been phrased in the form of a question.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Lord.
I think this is an outstandingly well-done business plan, very detailed. In fact, when I got done reading it, my initial thought was, let's buy 2. I will ask one question, a little clarification, and that is the hours for our 3 positions we're talking about here. So as I understand it, the concessions manager is not necessarily intended to be on site, but rather oversee the operations. Okay. Now, the mobile unit supervisors, we got it slated for 358 hours, but we're talking about 716 hours of use. That's only half of that coverage. And so I'm kind of trying, and so these are going to be part-time seasonal positions. And how are we covering the total 716 hours when we've only allocated 358 for the supervisor?
So if you look on the top of page 22, the intention is that the concessions manager would be on site for a chunk of the operational hours. When the concessions manager cannot be on site, we would have a mobile unit site supervisor. So there will always be some supervisor level personnel on site with the truck, supplemented by other part-time staff.
That's what I thought, but the narrative below did not make that clear. Thank you.
Good. Ms. Strickland and Ms. Stevens.
Thanks. I just have a quick comment. When I've been looking at this, one thing is that I do view the food needs of a tournament facility different than those needs that are at a pool. So I think trying to meet them both in this way does complicate it a bit. I think obviously at a tournament facility, as part of the draw of bringing in a group, is that you have a brick and mortar stand there offering food for people who are essentially at one place for a full day or 2 or 3 days. So being at a pool for a few hours is quite different, and what potentially you would need to offer is quite different. So I think that's one thing to consider. I think one concern I've had since we started talking about this has been the impact on the cost of a visit to the pool to a family or a single visitor by having the trucks there. Even with just having a dessert truck there, it does increase that expectation of whatever people, children you're bringing with you, that they're gonna get to go to that truck every time they go. The pools are already not particularly cheap to get into, so it is almost an automatic expense every time you go. So, or every other, you still have to manage that expectation. And so I want to thank Mr. McGruder for his comment about affordability, and at some point I'd like us to discuss that a bit further. It does seem like some of these offerings are kind of akin to school lunch offerings more than what I would see at maybe a Snyder's concession stand. So if we can keep those costs capped or at least in check, offer some kind of voucher, I think, maybe looking at what we're spending on the truck versus being able to use some of the funds from maybe a brand new truck versus purchasing the used to subsidize those food costs in some way for families who are going to come and be met with an additional expense that they're going to have to either say no to or try to accommodate in some other way. So thanks, Mr. Magruder, for that comment, and I hope we can go back and explore that again.
And that would kind of fall in with your existing scholarship, it could be an extension of your scholarship.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Sure. And Jeff and Todd, do you see the difference, as Lisa's indicated, tournament versus pool?
Yeah, there's, like she said, you're there at softball, as you know, softball tournament, you're there all day, so you have pretty much a captive audience. I'm not gonna speak for the pools, but my personal experience at pools, I'm going to the pool for 3 or 4 hours, so I'll purchase some food.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is gonna, the advantage of the truck is we could be flexible with that. At a tournament, you're gonna be selling coffee and breakfast sandwiches and stuff like that. At the pools, they're not even gonna be open for business until lunchtime, so I think there is flexibility.
Great. Ms. Stevens?
I just wanted to go back to the cost, because I was looking at I used the Oakville Concession grid that was listed in the business plan, because that seems to be more like what they're trying to achieve with the food truck. And when I added up for the 5 years that are listed there, the net total revenue, it was under $50,000. And so that was just for the net revenue. That didn't include indirect costs, which was stated in the paragraph above there. And that was under $50,000. That was a 5-year listing there. So even if you doubled it, because somewhere else I read that the food truck is probably good for 10 to 12 years, that puts you at 100. That still doesn't cover the cost of just the truck. That's not even the supply, or the other indirect costs. So to buy 2 seems a little wild to me, but I do worry about the costs. So, and again, it has everything to do with.
I think something that might clear that up is we are open fewer than 30 days, whereas the pools, they'll be operating over 100.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's a
Joe, did you have something to add to that?
If I remember correctly, the years that you were referencing were 2017, 2021, Patty?
Yes.
So one of those years would have largely been closed down for the COVID year as well, so you're really talking 4 years, not 5. I don't see the numbers in front of me, but I would have thought that 2020 would have been shut down for the most part.
In 2020, we opened on July 2nd.
Sorry?
In 2020, we opened on July 2nd or 3rd. I don't know the exact date. So we
1 year's lower, right?
Yeah, so we missed April, May, June.
And just pointing back to the presentation, it does have a payback analysis in there. Ms. Denise?
Yeah, just two questions, one follow-up on the table and then just a side thought. So the question is the intent for the storage for the cold products, the extra yogurt, the extra pizza, the extra et cetera, is the intent for that to be stored where? Is that Oakville?
Park Forest and potentially Oakville, depending on what the needs are. If there's a tournament, for example, out there, they may be able to swap and use some of the storage for some of the food items.
There's a couple questions in one on this one. So is Park Forest, I thought Park Forest was the one that didn't have any concession area. How would you store it there? Is there a freezer purchase? So that we're gonna also be purchasing on-site things at least one location to serve the mobile unit. So this idea of just finishing off the concession there instead of doing part of it, like there must be space somewhere there.
Yeah, there is some limited space where we could put a freezer in Park Forest.
Okay, because in this table, then back to the table, it says Welsh and Park Forest pool performance. So even though we're talking like there is no concession at Park Forest, there must be, because there's table numbers that relate to some concession there currently too. Unless it's mislabeled.
That's the novelty items that are being sold.
Okay. So these numbers of profitability are based on those sales happening every day though, not once a week.
Correct. The schedule that's proposed is for 7-day-a-week operation.
At different locations.
Correct.
Whereas this table, like if you're saying Welsh and Park Forest, those are 7-day operation numbers.
Which table are you referencing?
Page 7. I guess what I'm asking too is like, so those numbers right there that already represent concession income, are we saying that income will go away and this other income stream will exist? Or are we saying that income stream will stay and we'll add that other income stream?
That income stream will stay, but probably be reduced because we will have a concessions truck in lieu of those concessions
Right, so,
part of the time.
okay, so that's what I'm getting to with staffing. So right now, those concession numbers are driven by staff that are concession staff. And other staff that happen to be there, that go over and sell some ice cream and then do a full membership or something, right? So there's staff doing that job right now, but we were going to hire more staff for the concession truck.
Correct.
And not have the staff in the locations, so therefore those sales will go away. In that manner. It's supplanted by, the truck is now the whole deal, right? I'm still trying to figure out now.
No, we're still gonna sell ice cream products and soda at the pools
So you'll,
in addition to the concessions.
so you're keeping those concession staff and adding more concession staff.
I think that's the key right there, is it's not concession staff, it's front desk staff, it's.
Thank you.
everything like that.
Okay, all right, and then, so then the storage is just at Park Forest and Oak Hall, right? And then, who will be driving the truck that will be trained, the seasonal staff? Or,
Either the concessions manager or the concession supervisor that's working that day.
okay, so if we buy this, we have to hire a full-time staff. It's an automatic done deal, that driver, that manager.
No.
Okay, I thought that's what Nalini, kind of what we identified, that like, if we buy this, when does the need for the manager kick in, and how does that relate to who's driving this thing?
Again, I'll just point that the concessions manager discussion is out of the staffing study.
I know.
It did not incorporate a mobile concession stand whatsoever. So it looked at the future of our parks, whether they be brick and mortar or mobile.
Okay,
And then the add,
but will this add early demand, because we didn't build those
if
yet,
it's successful,
right?
if it's successful, I would say probably,
Okay,
because we need staffing.
so until that would happen, who would drive it?
The supervisor,
Fine,
the
fine.
concession supervisor for that day would drive.
or the part-time concession manager.
Okay, and are either of those seasonal staff,
It would be seasonal employees, yes.
like the members currently?
That is my
Seasonal in
understanding.
that manner. Okay, thank you. I have one idea I wanted to promote. So we talked a little bit about how pool concessions are different than tournament concessions, and we talked about how there's already a plan in place to build concessions on site. Another stopgap measure could be actually to address some social justice issues by partnering with the SCASD and their summer lunch program and the storage space that they have and that the staff that they utilize. So yogurts, these kinds of things, can we partner with other partners as opposed to making this investment that hits our goals of climate change and social justice more than this does? So I don't know that anybody's talked to SCASD, but Welsh is literally right on that location. And then a follow-up, did we already get permission where you're intending on using this? And this is why many questions, I would have liked to have more time so I could have done it in my own board and not been laughed at. But many questions, have you identified locations that can definitely be utilized to park this, like on the SCASD property at Welsh? Are you gonna have children going outside the pool, getting a hand stamp, getting the hot dog going back in? Does it drive inside the pool gates? Like, so have you identified the parking locations for this mobile vehicle at each of the facilities where it would be used? And on the owners, like with PSU, I looked at the lease, we have to get permission from them. Did you get permission? Are we gonna get it before we make the purchase? Because it looks like that's where this is trending. And can we get permission from SCASD about where to park? So where is the intention that those will be parked? I don't really wanna have kids running across the road for it, and I'm just envisioning that.
We would absolutely go through whatever permitting requirements there were if we decided to use a site in different municipalities depending on what the rules were for each municipality. As far as where it's going to be parked, Todd, I know they've already talked about specific spots of where that would go.
Yeah, we would utilize the same spot that existing food trucks have been using.
And is that across the road?
No,
Okay,
it's
thank you.
at Welsh Pool, it is, we will open a gate and the truck parks right at the gate.
Thanks.
And at Park Forest, they actually pull into the gate inside the facility.
And I would just offer in fairness to staff, I think they've pulled a lot of stuff together, they haven't pulled everything together. And if we can help them, should this move forward, discussions like this are very valuable. Unless,
I just have one more.
oh, please,
Please,
please.
Have you guys considered the food truck being in, like, I guess, conjunction with the pool passes that we buy sometimes, like, would they be able to get certain foods at the food truck with the pool pass, or you guys not gonna put them together anymore?
We haven't gotten into that granular detail yet, but that is a good point, so we can talk about.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, so one thing that, adding on is something you mentioned about climate sustainability, Laura, and one thing I've noticed in the survey responses from this report, there is a lot of concerns about trash. Some upcoming, the amount of trash that this would accumulate, but also existing trash. There was some comments, oh, if there's a tournament, there's trash laying around. So it sounds like we're kind of falling behind on addressing that now. How are we gonna address that going forward? Again, taking care of what we have, but also aligning it with our climate sustainability goals. And just think about trash, especially like around pools, like that can be a big turnoff or not even a big maintenance issue if you have trash get in the pool. People don't wanna, go to a dump and, otherwise they'll get the EBGBs and leave. And also food, think about even food allergies, like if there is particular food that's left behind or such, what happens if a child or somebody that is so allergic to that they can't even touch that, accidentally touches it because it got left on a bench somewhere or wherever they were sitting or something like that, so.
Sure, just a point of reference, that refuse and recycling did come up either in finance or exec, I don't remember which one, honestly. But staff had a good answer and I'll let them provide that. But one of the other things that we threw out as an example was Penn State in some of their facilities are all compostable products and stuff. And so that was something that we threw out. That level of detail that we're not to yet, that could be a valuable discussion. But please, refuse and recycle.
So we've got multiple trash and recycling receptacles that we talked about, and what the needs would be. Obviously, we would want to add additional ones if that was warranted. Our current staff do go around and kind of pull this area to the pools specifically to pick up trash. And actually, they recycle a ton of pizza boxes each day. So I know Todd could probably speak to how much recycling really comes into the pool. They really do a good job with their recycling.
Follow up though.
Yeah, one other thing I would add is somebody that has worked in industries that have been challenged to be fully staffed, like thinking this truck's gonna be fully staffed and there's gonna even be enough people at the pools or the parks to even clean up the trash, that we're gonna have it fully staffed. Is that actually gonna be reality, or are we gonna be seeing that a similar challenge that a lot of other industries are having, trying to keep fully staffed?
That subject came up in finance or exec as well, and I'll
So
let
the answer to that, since we started paying competitive wage this year, we were turning people away, turning applicants away. We were fully staffed. We don't foresee that.
Thank you. I just two items. One, in your program plan, you'll see that it is identified that there was a previous staffing issue, and that in this upcoming budget, there's going to be a continued raise of the park staff. So seeing that you've already increased that wage, and that increased wage has already resulted in full staffing, I guess in the future, when we're looking at the upcoming budget, we can do kind of a level setting there that whatever the current wage is sufficient, because that was an old sentence based on old assumptions, so now we have these new assumptions. Our board is also interested in talking about a $15 minimum wage, but we would also, like, first and foremost, want to talk about the discrepancy, I think, between the library and the park staff payment. Another conversation, a policy that we don't frequently get to have this indulgent time in, and I appreciate it. But second item, all those pizza boxes that are recycled represent tipped pizza drivers and represent local industry and represent local jobs. And do not think for 1 minute sitting around this table when you cast your vote to buy that truck that it will not have a direct impact on those workers and those industries and those businesses that are in our municipalities. That right there, you're allowing yourself to be moved by illusion and myth if you think it's not going to have an effect on them. Now, if you're facing that head on and saying, I'm willing to have that effect because I think it's better service for my patrons, that's a different conversation. But that's not the conversation that I heard here tonight. I heard that that's need is being met, and that's what the survey says as well. So I would really encourage us to take our time to think about whether we really want to supplant people that are working hard for tips and delivering pizzas by purchasing this truck as a stopgap measure right now. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Ms. Whitman, please.
A minor note on the impact on climate, that having, and this sold me on the positive impact of the truck, is that having one truck at one location, if it reduces the number of trips that pizza delivery people are making, even though it is local, they're making wages and they're getting tips, then it is having an impact, positive impact on the climate. And I'll end that example by saying, as we know, particularly this and most things that we have in front of us, very complex. If you do a cradle-to-grave analysis, it's hard to pick one parameter and make a decision on it. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I'm gonna draw this conversation to closure, no later than 8:45. We have a motion and we have a second. We did.
Take public comment?
We will. There was a request for additional time that would require withdrawing the motion. Are you interested in doing that?
No, I think we've got plenty of information. A lot of the questions that were raised are operational questions that certainly can be solved as time goes on, as picking up trash. And those things do have to be worked out, I do see that. And we also will mention that we do want to keep our goal that eventually it's going to be several years making. We do want to go to permanent concessions. I don't see that happening in 5 or 6 years.
Do any members of the public that are with us this evening have comment that they would like to share on this matter? Seeing or hearing none. And, oh, yes, Ms. Blair.
Muted.
You're muted.
I have been listening to the whole conversation, and I had a lot of things that I was going to say, and I feel that voting on this is extremely premature because of so many unanswered issues, and I agree that there are going to be impacts locally on local businesses that will be detrimental. And I wanted to say as a nutritionist that I feel like the offerings are not what we want to be moving on to for young kids. We want to have a broader scope of offerings, which I don't think you as a group can offer. They will be necessary to have other folks who have a more of a culinary orientation and can use products that are not normally within the food supply, the local food supply that we feed people all the time. And what we're feeding people all the time isn't particularly nutritious, and it lends itself to obesity and also to gut problems, which are very prevalent in the United States because of what we eat. So I think we're not being forward thinking about what we should be putting on the menu. A lot of kids now are vegetarian or vegan for that matter. I don't see any offerings for that. I think that there's just so much as an observer here that is unresolved, and everyone assumes that this will make a lot of money for the park. But how will it affect the local economy? That really needs to be reassessed, and the people who are affected, because there's an awful lot more food trucks out there than when you did that survey. I made a list of food trucks. There are a number of very creative food trucks who would see this as detrimental to their business. And I don't think we're going to win friends by just forging ahead on this, as much as it seems great to you people sitting there in COG or in the Park and Recs. I really feel that this is premature. That's my estimation, and I know you have a great plan, but as Ms. Stevens said, the details about how this is going to affect community entrepreneurs haven't been worked out, or how your one truck is going to service all these areas at the same time. But none of these details seem to be worked out to me. So I will rest on that, but I don't think that you should be moving on this so quickly. I agree more with Laura that you need to be much more cautious in the way you approach this, because you're seeing it as money in pocket for recreation and parks, or for the park authority, but you're not really sure of anything you're saying in my estimation. So I'll rest there. Thank you.
Thank you,
For
Ms.
the-
Blair. Anyone else from the public have anything to share with the general forum? If not, as indicated, we have a motion and we have a second on the floor.
I'm gonna call for a motion, or call for a unit vote,
Okay.
but I have a comment on the motion, because I just took the time to look up in my copy of the 2022 COG budget, okay? And I cannot find this identified as an actual cost. I found it stricken on page 147, because it didn't make it through. So I'm just wondering, what fund is it in this year's 2022 budget that we're basing this motion of the amendment on? What page, can we find it in the budget? Thanks.
Good evening, Joe Vigilante, COG Finance Director. It is not in this year's budget, that's why we're requesting a budget amendment. We're requesting the budget amendment in Fund C21, and we're asking to take the funds out of fund balance. And C21 is the Parks Capital Equipment Fund.
Then that is not the motion that I understood that was made. I thought that we were making a budget amendment to add funds to an existing item. But just so I'm clear and everyone is clear, that amendment is being made as a completely new item to the budget, not adding on more money from something that was existing. Is that correct? To say that it was not existing in the 2022 budget?
If it were existing in the 22 budget, okay, it was not a scheduled purchase in the 2022 budget, correct? We're not saying that it was a $60,000 item and we're asking to increase it to $132,000.
Right, it was not in there.
We were gonna have those funds in fund balance. Instead of having them in fund balance, the budget amendment is to request $132,000 to move out of fund balance and into a line item purchase.
Thank you, Joe.
No concession to.
Understood?
Yep, thank you.
Great. Okay. Okay. Pam, did you have anything?
No,
Okay.
we're going to the unit vote.
Yes, so Ferguson Township has requested a unit vote. We warned you that this was gonna happen. So if you're not prepared, shame on you. But at this point, we will recess to the executive.
Chair, I have a procedural question for the
Yes,
public. So is this kind of unit vote the kind that the public can listen to deliberation should they choose? And if it is, and they want to listen to an individual board's deliberation, but they're on Zoom, how do they manage that? Thank you, Scott. He's got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, in a few moments, I will screen share a list of numbers for each municipality that will bridge the gap between those in the room and those online. And the public is certainly more than welcome to dial into any one of those numbers as a listener. The board chair or president will facilitate the discussion and vote before coming back.
And if I could just add, in 2019, the general forum adopted unit vote procedures and established that there are 3 types of unit votes. This is a type 2 unit vote, which is one that can be called upon for a vote by the floor as Laura did, but it is not one that is required, a unit vote that is required under the Articles of Agreement. So it's different from the type 1 unit vote that is required, such as for debt or to purchase land or property. So there are steps that are slightly different. After the unit vote is requested, the chair will recess the meeting so that the municipal governing bodies can discuss the matter. As Scott indicated, quorum of the governing body is not required. Members who are present will be voting to represent the unit. The public may listen, as was noted, and we will give you the phone numbers to participate in that. Public comment is only to have taken place collectively in the room here. There is not to be separate public comment during the unit vote caucus by each municipality. So we've taken public comment. However, the public may listen to the unit vote discussions, but the comment from the public has already been taken. No minutes are taken, no individual votes are taken, and they are not recorded. Only the unit vote is to be reported. Municipalities or members of a municipal governing body may not abstain unless they have a conflict of interest, and in this case, Half Moon would not participate. So lastly, the result is determined by a majority of voting municipality units. In the event of a tie, the motion fails. Following the vote, the chair reconvenes the general forum.
And our understanding was the managers will report to the executive director when their municipal bodies are ready. And at that point, I will call the meeting back to order.
The only last thing I would add is that the municipalities separate more. The last time we did this exercise, we were all kind of clumped in here, so space in the lobby, separate out, because you will probably be on a speakerphone trying to reach out, and just make that as easy as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and screen share those numbers now.
This time, Mr. Binky will do a roll call of those votes.
State College Borough.
3-1, no.
College.
Voted in favor.
Ferguson.
No.
Half Moon abstains. Harris. Voted in favor. And Patton.
Patton unanimously in favor.
So we have 3 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstention.
By a 3-2 vote, budget amendment passes. Continuing on in the agenda. Now, I'm going to back up. Again, we had some great conversations in there, and I know staff is going to be looking at this reporting and picking various elements of it, and before we move forward, they will be answered. I have utmost faith in our staff. We're going to go back to the proclamation designating September as National Library Card Sign-Up Month. Lisa, are you with us?
I am.
Excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful. It's raining hard here at the library, that's for sure. I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to present this proclamation. It's a very important one for our community. And this proclamation recognizes September 2022 as Library Card Sign-Up Month in the Center Region. And I just want to go ahead really quickly. I know it's been a long meeting, but I think it's really important to look at some of the pieces of this proclamation. Whereas established in 1987, Library Card Sign-Up Month has been held each September to mark the beginning of the school year. Whereas the American Library Association and libraries nationwide remind parents, caregivers, and students that signing up for a library card is the first step on the path to academic achievement and lifelong learning. Whereas libraries and librarians play a crucial role in the education and development of children, whereas libraries offer a variety of programs to stimulate an interest in reading and learning. And whereas library resources serve students of all ages, from early literacy to STEM programs to research databases, and whereas signing up for a library card is the first step on the path towards academic achievement and lifelong learning. And whereas a library card gives students the tools that foster success in the classroom and beyond, whereas librarians create welcoming, inclusive spaces for students of all backgrounds to learn together and to engage with one another. And whereas a library card empowers all people to pursue their dreams and explore new passions and interests. And whereas libraries are constantly transforming and expanding services to meet the evolving needs of their communities. Whereas College, Ferguson, Harris, Half Moon, and Patton Townships and the Borough of State College, united as the Center Region Council of Governments, support the SCLO Center Region Library, value the important role our library plays in our region and each of our communities, and salute the outstanding work of our library staff. And now, therefore, the Center Region Council of Governments proclaims September as Library Card Sign-Up Month in the Center Region and encourages everyone to sign up for their own library card. And I would say that we hear every day how important a library card is to people of all ages in our community. And we want to encourage everyone to go to go.sclo.org/get-a-card. And that's go.sclo.org/get-a-card. If you don't have a library card, if you're not sure if your card is still active, or you maybe want to send it to a friend and encourage them to sign up for a card. And then finally, just a reminder that our fall children's event calendar is now available at sclolibrary.org as well, so you can take a look at that too. Paper copies are also available in our children's department. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to read this proclamation and share this with all of you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. If someone is comfortable, we could accept the motion to endorse Proclamation 2022-2, designating September as National Library Card Sign-Up Month in the Center Region.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, please say no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Lisa. Continuing on in the agenda, we have the university report. Ms. Young is out enjoying herself for her birthday, a recent birthday. But she did forward some information out to us on monkeypox and the first case there at the university. State College Area School District report. I'm not seeing any members in attendance. Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just remark on the fact that earlier this evening before the meeting, several of us had a chance to look at the new hybrid, plug-in hybrid escapes that arrived last week for the Center Region Code Administration. Those are, the one that was out there is one of 4 that will be rolling in and part of the fleet here in the next few weeks. And we will be testing and piloting and getting a lot of experience with those vehicles this year so that will inform future purchases of hybrid or electric vehicles. We're looking forward to getting that information so that we can continue moving through a sustainability initiative that will really impact and benefit all of the COG. Next month, before the meeting, we hope to have the attenuator vehicle that was approved at the last general forum meeting. The fire company, the Center Region Fire Protection Program and the Alpha Fire Company are in the process of outfitting that vehicle. It will be available for service by the end of the month, and then we'll be able to show it off and you all can see how that works and how it will be a benefit to the fire program. So I'll look for that for the next general forum meeting. And we did have the monthly activity report that was included in the packet. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer the questions about that activity report.
Questions for the Executive Director? Very good. Continuing on, Agency Director reports, anything under that?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Unless there's any questions for any of the agency directors from the members. Okay. Authority Board and Committee reports. Executive Committee, Mr. Barlow.
I want to underline one thing. Most of the items in the Executive Committee came up here this evening, but there's also one about a discussion of the COG building intermunicipal agreement, and that we should go back and discuss it with our boards. I've already scheduled that with my board. Other than that, it's all there.
Very good. Finance Committee, Mr. Trevino.
Yes, the Finance Committee and the Facilities Committee had a joint meeting. The description or the summary that's provided in your agenda, I think adequately describes what the committee did. We did establish some dates for the budget review sessions to take place. I would note that one of the dates in your agenda, October 5th, is going to be changed. Looks like tentatively it'll be on the 6th, but that has not been finalized yet. That's the end of my report.
Yes, I do believe it has now been finalized, and the movement from the 5th to the 6th is out of respect for Yom Kippur. Human Resources Committee, Mr. Wilson, are you still with us?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I really have nothing to add to the description in the agenda, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Parks Capital did not meet. Looks like they're scheduled for September 8th.
Yes, we will hopefully be reviewing the COG Capital Improvement Program because as everyone probably has realized by now, 87% of that $6 million+ tag for this year is parks. So we have a lot to talk about at our next meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Public Safety, Mr. Takak, they did not meet in August. Next meeting is September 13th. Anything to add?
No, sir.
Thank you. Facilities Committee attended the Finance Committee meeting with us, with the Facilities attended the Finance Committee meeting to review the CIP. Next meeting is September 6th. Ms. Hartle's not here. Mr. Bernier, anything from your side of the house?
No, sir.
Thank you. Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, Ms. Strickland.
Nothing really to add to the description other than we had a really good discussion on the county affordable housing study. A good update from that from Mr. May, and I think that's in the SharePoint folder now, and there was a lot of good information included in the agenda on where that study is.
Excellent. Climate Action and Sustainability, Ms. Whitman.
Thank you for the excellent write-up, whoever did that. It summarizes very well what we did. I just wanted to bring to your attention that there is, in the matter of records, it's item F, a letter written, and thank you very much, by Mr. Norberg, explaining that the Climate Action Sustainability Committee agreed to become part of the Pennsylvania Clean Energy, which is a web-based information platform. They set up by somebody in Westchester County, done on his own time. It's essentially going to be a clearinghouse for suggestions and actions that have already been proven to be successful in the area of greenhouse gas reduction and sustainability. So we will not only benefit from the site, we will contribute to the site. Thank you for that letter. Good.
Excellent, thank you. Parks Governance meets again this coming Wednesday. We're going to continue our discussions. Hopefully somebody's going to push out a draft document prior to that that we can start chewing on and move forward in those discussions. Slow Library Board, Lisa, anything that you want to draw to our attention there?
No, none.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Parks and Rec Authority, I don't see anybody on. Very good. Other business, staff has provided us with a number of matters of record. Is there any of those that you wish to draw to our attention?
No, Betsy covered the one item that I was going to remark on, so that's it.
Excellent. Any questions on any of the matters of record? Okay. As always, staff has provided our calendar and helpful reference links. Is there anything else for the good of the cause? Seeing nor hearing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I will second. We are adjourned. Thank you so much for the discussion this evening.